guys, it's Thursday, and that means it's time to do some upgrades on the Poison Spyder Wraith budget build. However, we got a big snowstorm this week, and my parts got delayed. So I tried to wait till the last minute to do this video, hoping that they'd be on my porch when I got home, but no such luck. But I wanted to take this opportunity to just go over where we've been with this truck. It's gone through a lot of changes, and if you add up how many weeks into this thing we are, and at $50 a week, there's a lot of money in this truck as well. So let's kind of see where we're at, see where we've been and where we're headed. Very first thing, when this thing showed up, I didn't really know what I was going to do with it. Came up with this idea for the budget build, decided to just try and run it at stock, upgrading as we went, trying to use that budget-minded idea, but not necessarily buying those cheap parts and buying the good parts we wanted, but just spreading it out. When it came the very first week, the very first thing we did was change the gearing and throw a Castle BEC in there. Very first thing I suggest you do when you get this thing out of the box. Change that gearing, keep that motor alive, and throw a Castle BEC in there to get the power out of the servo and let you run a 3S LiPo perfectly fine on an axial ESC as soon as you add that Castle BEC. After that, we threw some of the axial brand universal inner axle shafts in this thing. What that does is that really helps you keep the front end alive. It doesn't allow those stock dog bones to oversteer, end up coming around and breaking your knuckles and C's. You can really put off doing some of those more expensive upgrades if you pick smart upgrades right out of the box. From there, when we went out and ran it, we ended up tearing up some drive shafts. So ended up throwing in some drive shafts from MIP. MIP are kind of my go-to drive shafts. I use the AX10 version without dig in here instead of the Wraith version. They're cheaper, and it takes a little bit of a modification on the spur gear cover, just a little bit of clearancing with the Dremel, but you save some money, and they use a 4mm set pin to go through there rather than the 3mm that comes with it. So little things like that are just my personal preferences, but things that I find helpful. From there, what we ended up doing was tearing up the plastic hubs that came on those trail ready bead locks. So we went ahead and threw on the Vanquish design SLW hub that these wheels were meant to accept, or the trail ready bead locks were meant to accept. Great little upgrade, gives you a lot of adjustability when you choose those, and is much more durable than that plastic pin drive hex hub that ended up getting torn up on us pretty close to right away. From there, turns out that we needed to finally replace that servo. That stock servo became pretty loose up front. Those bushings were wearing out, and there are the bearing repair kits and things like that that you can swap into them, but I decided to swap it out for something that put out over 3 times the power. 420 ounce-inch Furtado servo is what I put up front there, and again, that Castle BEC feeds it to give you all the power you need. After that, we decided to upgrade that stock axial 20-turn motor, which survived 8 weeks of pretty heavy abuse, and I am very hard on these trucks. So after 8 weeks, we decided to throw in a Holmes Hobbies 13-turn Crawlmaster motor. 13-turn Crawlmaster is equivalent to about a 27-turn standard motor. The reason that terminology is a little hard to understand is that the Crawlmaster is a 5-slot armature rather than a 3-slot armature, and that has to do with the number of winds that go around it. The one thing that happens is it smooths out the motor. So that's the reason that I prefer the Crawlmaster motors from Holmes Hobbies over a standard 3-slot motor, which he also sells, but I wanted to go with the 5-slot. After we did the brush motor upgrade, we also went through and upgraded the gears inside the transmission. The very first thing that normally blows up on these things, if it's not a slipper, it's the idler gear inside the transmission. So get a set of gears. I suggest getting the full set, the full 3-gear set. Axial and Hot Racing have a set out. I've had good luck with the Hot Racing setup, and I've got a set of the axial gears coming that I plan to test out as well. So after, what was that be? That was 8 weeks, so 9 weeks in, we changed out the stock diff locks. Now, those did not fail on me. I have had those stock axial sintered iron cross lockers blow up on me. However, it's normally with brushless power. So I went with a pair of the Grip Fab lockers. Those were the ARB style locker that I thought looked really cool, and was lucky enough to get a set of those to throw in this truck. So those were a fun little upgrade, a little bit of style, even though they're hidden inside the axles. I know they're there, and I think that they're really cool. After that, we finally did the Vanquish knuckles and C-hub conversion up front. That is added a little bit of strength. We were able to survive up to that point without breakage, thanks to those axial universal shafts up front. The knuckles and C's, nice little strength upgrade, good looking aluminum parts, and I really like the performance benefits of the Vanquish knuckles, which raise that steering arm up over a normal replacement part like something like STRC or a bunch of the Chinese cheap stuff that they just replicate a stock part in aluminum. I prefer a part that has a little bit more design put into it, and you do pay a little bit more, but if you have the opportunity, try and pick those parts that have performance upgrades as well as strength upgrades. After the knuckles and C's, the new Axial BFG R35 tires came in. We swapped the S40 stock compound out for the R35 and got quite a bit of performance upgrade out of the much stickier compound than those stock tires. The next week, we got rid of those flimsy stock Axial plastic ready-to-run links. The nice thing about those plastic links is that the whole truck kind of balls up and then flexes back out after you hit something hard. However, you do start to lose some of that bounce back over time with those plastic links, so going to a nice set of links is important. I did go with the titanium versions. There are cheaper versions like the Axial aluminum ones, but if you're going to spend the money, spend it once and get something that gives you a larger thread diameter and uses a better rod end than the 3mm Axial stuff. So I went with the Vanquish titanium versions on this. They're the 3/16, and you'll never have to replace the links on these again. The stock Axial shocks work, but they wear out. It's a plastic shock. You run it as hard as we run these trucks, they're gonna wear out over time. I decided to go with kind of my favorite high performance shock, and on this, that was the Pro-Line Power Stroke shocks. I went with the Power Stroke shocks from the rear of a Slash 4x4. These are not the scale Pro-Line Power Stroke shocks that are a smaller diameter. These are the larger diameter Power Stroke shocks for the rear of a Slash 4. And the nice thing about those is they've got a larger diameter, so they give you more dampening, more tuning. They are a true dual stage shock, giving you 2 spring options on it. And they're kind of my go-to shock for a Wraith. I love the performance of them, and they're the proper size to give you good dampening. Later on down the road, we added something that you may not have thought about adding, which was a set of knuckle weights. I went with the RC Bros knuckle weights specifically made for the Wraith Vanquish knuckles. These hang off the back side of the knuckle where the attachment point for a second set of steering arms would be, or the opposite side of steering arms as is in this design, because it's the same knuckle for each side. So they bolted on there very easily, and that allowed me to add a little bit more weight up front without putting it in my tire or wheel, adding more rotational resistance and making this truck a little bit harder to start up if you're looking for a little bit more speed. So I really like those knuckle weight setups in this car, and I'm really happy that I did do that upgrade. Then we took a couple weeks off from adding parts to build up our bank, and what we used that bank for was upgrading to a brushless system. The brushed motors are great for some budget-oriented upgrades, but if you want kind of the ultimate performance out of one of these trucks, you need to go to a brushless system. The lowest turn I recommend for a brush motor is a 27 turn. The 20 turn that comes in it is too fast for a brush motor to survive because of the amount of stress that gets in there. So the lowest I recommend is that 27 turn to be able to have enough torque to not overheat the motor. So if you want more speed than a 27 turn, you got to go brushless. I've ran these trucks I don't know how many hours, and it's just that's what it comes out to be. So for this truck, I went with the Tekin Rock 412 3100 kV motor powered by a Castle Mamba Max Pro, kind of my go-to brushless setup. And at that same time, I also did some waterproofing on it. So that gave me a setup that will run where those brush motors ran, but allow me to get through those same areas much quicker. And when you're picking a brushless system, you need to be sensored. Sensored in that 3000 kV range on 3S LiPo is perfect for these Wraiths. You'll love the power. It's about as fast as these things are controllable at, but still has that low end power to be able to crawl slow, plenty of slow speed startup, and torque for days. So, fantastic setup. Super happy that that's the system that I'm running in here. After that, we got back into some transmission upgrades. We had already done the gears inside, but now we needed to go beef up that drivetrain that brushless motor was going to be spinning. Those 48 pitch stock gears are not going to hold up with that brushless system. So we went through and we did the supershafty.com beefy top shaft and a Robinson Racing slipper. That slipper setup is much more adjustable than the stock axial style slipper. It's actually a fairly useful slipper, and I would recommend that to anybody. So supershafty.com, that top shaft is the piece that you need to be able to adapt that stage 3 slipper from Robinson Racing for the Slash. You can go to his site and see all the details on that. So after we did those transmission upgrades, took a little bit of a hiatus on this build. I had a bunch of other stuff going on, a bunch of other builds I wanted to get working on, and I needed to shelve the project for a little bit to really kind of gain my momentum back on it, spark some more interest, and get moving again. When we came back, we decided it was time to upgrade the wheels. Those Trail Ready bead locks were just not holding the bead consistently, and they needed to go. So some Vanquish SLWs were the choice at the time. These wheels I have on there now, pretty solid wheel. Can't really go wrong with an SLW. Vanquish has released a ton of different styles and new wheels that looks incredibly scale. And we may see an upgrade to these here in the not so far off future if I really get antsy to throw something else on there. But we'll see how that goes in the upcoming weeks. After that, last week what we did was we upgraded the stock soft inner foams on those BFG tires to a set of the Crawler Innovation Deuces Wild. And after that, it brings us to here. That's a lot of upgrades. It's a lot of money, and we still have a ways to go before this truck is done. So, like I've talked about in the past, we do have some plans for a chassis upgrade. That will come, and at that point, this budget build is probably going to kind of come to a head. Once we kind of lose the cage, we kind of lose that connection to you guys with a stock Wraith chassis, upgrading as you go into this truck with the cage. So I'm going to try and keep doing upgrades every week until this chassis is done, until we swap it over. At that point, it'll kind of be the end, let's say, of the budget build, but it'll live on in a fully custom truck. Now, until that point, I've got some things that I would like to get done. There's a number of little things here and there that just need to be tidied up on this truck before I think it's really ready to get thrown into a chassis like that. We've got some things that are slightly cosmetic but still performance. We've got some things that are new releases that have come out since maybe I chose some parts on here. So I may swap some of those parts out for some of the newer parts that I just want to run because of a new style or something like that. If you got something in particular you'd like to see, throw a comment down below and let me know, and I'll try and touch on it in the next video if it's not something that I actually plan on doing, or if it is something that I'd maybe like to do, or there's a specific reason for or against that particular upgrade. So that's it for now. Wish I could have got those upgrades done. Sorry again, but watch out next Thursday for week 25 of the budget build, where hopefully those new parts that I'm really looking forward to will be here so I can throw them on. We'll see you guys in the next one.